We completely forgot how to do this, but go ahead.
20 years of trying, 20 years.
And Senna sprints away. Banana
straight. Rossi's right in behind Lorenzo.
The 101st Indianapolis 500 is won by Takuma Sato. Dale Earnhardt will come to the caution flag to win the Daytona 500.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 51 of the Clutch Dump. After a small, brief, and certainly inadvertent hiatus, we are back in full force. The exact weekend that F1 is not back and not racing. But we had arguably a more entertaining weekend of racing at two of the most historic tracks in their respective countries that I care about. And then there's other tracks that happened in other places.
Right.
What I'm worried about is NASCAR at North Wilkesboro Speedway. Never thought I'd get to say that. And we had the ADAC Total Energies 24 hours of the Nurburgring. We had 24-hour racing this weekend, 3 weeks ahead of the ultimate 24-hour race, the 24 hours of Le Mans. I'm Nicholas Patty. I am joined by the fantastically brilliant, technologically minded, and engineering masterclass of a human being, Ben Walther.
That is going to become my Instagram bio.
So that he can be, exactly. So that he can have those intros. But before we jump into the 51st episode of this here podcast, I would implore you to go check out our social media. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at The Clutch Dump. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube at The Clutch Dump Pod if you're watching. Hello. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. And then you can find us wherever you listen to podcasts, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Pandora. If you still use that, what's going on?
Also, just heads up, I don't think we're on SoundCloud anymore. I stopped uploading there a while ago. So heads up to anyone.
Well, if you're on SoundCloud, please screw you. Go to YouTube. That all being said, we have NASCAR, we have Nürburgring, we have GT Challenge at COTA, which, Ryan, if you're listening, you got to shoot for S's Racing, which was super cool.
Super sick.
GT3 team. COTA. My brother was there, took some photos as well, not because he was hired, but he was there.
Because GT Racing.
200, which is motorcycles. We have Indy 500 qualifying, which, fun fact, Felix Rosenqvist was setting some milestones, some records there. And we have Barber, Moto America. Whew. Ben,
yes.
Take it from my slurring lips.
Okay,
Please
so
drop the sports series you'd like to talk about first.
Well, I'm going to start with some small bits that we have because, well, we have been gone for a while. It feels like it's been forever. But we have been gone for a while, so some things have been announced that are rather important that we think we should update y'all on. One of those being that tire warmers are back for Le Mans. So a big rule change for the WEC this year was there will be no tire warmers. This is something that is coming to Formula One next year, but it came to the WEC this year, and at the 6 hours of Spa, a lot of people crashed.
Not only have people crashed, but particular cars have been better or worse at bringing those tires up to temperature. Car of note, being the Porsche 963, is miserable on cold tires.
Right.
So the tire warmers, while it may not change the entire complexion of Le Mans, if there are, let's say 2 laps of difference and increased pace for cars that maybe were weaker on cold tires, I'm not saying it'll change anything drastically, but if there is a pit stop strategy that relies on overcutting or undercutting by a little bit, that may be changed by the fact that now tire warmers are going to be accepted in Le Mans.
Yeah, so in pretty much where they figured this out, which if you look at it on paper, it totally makes sense that this wouldn't work because you have the GTP cars, the ones running in IMSA and WC, which are rear-wheel drive only, and then you have the LMH cars, the 499P, the Peugeot, and the Toyotas specifically, which are all-wheel drive, so they're going to be affected much less by cold tires. So that has been fixed, so just for whenever we do Le Mans content coming up and we're talking about it, just so that you're not like, wait, that was the thing. Yeah.
I already bought Shelby the Penske Motorsports Porsche hat. and so she's been wearing it the last few days at work. The one I wanted that hopefully you'll get me at Le Mans.
Hey, send me a
But
list.
she's been wearing it. And continue. Let me send you a list.
Okay. And then some other things that I'm going to update y'all on is the Pikes Peak International Hill Climb. So from what it looks like, Pikes Peak is growing a ton, which is pretty impressive for something that's over 100 years old, 101 to be exact. And this year, some pretty outstanding cars have been announced. Number one, there's going to be an Alpine on American soil. So we're getting an Alpine A110 Pikes Peak car, which is super cool. So Radford is running a car. Tanner Faust is going to be driving that. It looks fantastic.
Yeah. Which, if you're Radford, British as hell. Tanner Faust?
British company that is
Really?
now located and built in Los Angeles. And I'd also I also kind of wanted to throw in there. I know that he'll be at Le Mans, but I kind of wanted to throw in there that the co-owner of Radford is Jenson Button.
Yeah.
Just saying, y'all have a race car driver, whatever. So, but to be fair, Tanner Faust has been successful at Pikes Peak. So, and then Lucy Block. And then Lucy Block, the wife of Ken Block, will be running an electric Sierra car up Pikes Peak, which is super cool. Leah Block will be running. What's up?
Leah.
Yeah.
You answered my question. I was asking what his daughter was. Yeah.
Yes.
You said Leah.
Leah Block will be running the Hunapig, which is the crazy mid-engine 911 race car thing that Ken was supposed to run last year. Dai Yoshihara, who is...
I don't know why they didn't ask me, honestly.
I know.
The daughter of Ken Block. I mean, come on.
The heck. Dai Yoshihara will be running the Evasive Motorsports S2000. That build looks super cool. Ford is going to run Supervan 4 up the hill, which looks awesome. And, of course, that Aston Martin Vantage GT3 that we talked about earlier. Nick, Patty, I think we are going to talk about the Nürburgring 24.
Is your dad on the phone? Because your internet is horrible.
Is it? No, it's just been horrible for the past.
Very delayed.
My video is fine. Your video is horrible, and I can't hear your audio very well.
My video is fine. Okay, well, neither here nor there. Nobody's on my internet. So.
I think everybody's on my internet. But
speaking of the Nürburgring 24, I'm going to let you go through the details. I just want to preempt that conversation and say that I was watching this race and Porsche wasn't doing well, so I really didn't give a shit. However, I was pissed that Ferrari won. However, I was okay with Ferrari winning when I saw the sweet old German man handing out beers at the podium to anybody and everybody.
It was so good.
Klaus,
it was
outstanding. I forgot his last name. I almost cried, dude. I was like, he's tried for over 20 years. He's giving out beers. He's got his old worn weather German hat. His wife died.
It was a whole thing. Yeah.
And the Ferrari 296. I will say this. Random sidebar. John Hindhoff was talking about during the broadcast how Frank Stippler is one of the experts of the Nordschleife. Subtle plug. My dad was taken on hot laps with Frank Stippler at the Nordschleife in a 996 RSR back in 2004, and may or may not have bought Frank Stippler's Super Cup that he raced at the Nordschleife with. But Ben, take it away.
May or may not have. We'll never know. So this past weekend was the Nürburgring 24, which was a fantastic race because all GT racing is good. And the Nürburgring 24 is not an IMSA race. It is not a WEC race. It races in a series called NLS, which only happens at the Nürburgring. This is the big event for the season, the 24-hour race. There's also a 12-hour race, and then there's a couple other shorter ones that are done by lap count, etc., etc. But the cool thing about
Sam racing the Turbo Cup there.
So I looked into this. So something to note is the Nürburgring 24. So.
Oh no, SP4.
Yes. So I'll get to that. Give me a second. So The Nürburgring 24 is a class race. There were 135 cars in this race, which is about twice as many as there will be at Le Mans. It's a huge race.
But the track is 3 times as long. So.
Right, which is why you can do that. It's class racing, and the classes are split up by displacement, and then there's rules within that of what you have to meet, etc., etc. So the classes start at SP1, which is 1.4 liters, and they go up to SP9, which is 4 liters. And so SP9 is all the GT3 cars. So
is the Mercedes with the V8 and everything really under 4 liters?
See, here's the thing. I don't think it is, but I think they have to like run a restrictor plate or something for this. Like,
okay, so SP9 is really just GT3.
Right. Right. I think all the GT3 cars have to play to the SP9 rules, kind of excluding displacement, sort of, kind of.
Okay.
But yes, I did have that question at about hour 13. I was like, that car's 6.3 liters. That doesn't make sense. But it's done by displacement, and then there's certain classes where, so like there's SP3, which is 2 liters, and there's SP3T, which is 2 liter turbo. Now, something that came up was Mr. Patty over here happens to have an old race car. And the reason this came up is because there's a very famous old race car that still runs in the Nürburgring 24. If you've ever watched the Nürburgring 24, I've watched it for about 4 or 5 years now. There is an...
That's not even why my question came up. I just saw like a Cayman S with the interior stripped out and some race tires, and I was...
So, but there's an old race car. There's an Opel Manta that still races. It's from like 1990 or something like that. It still races. It's very famous. So it made a return to the 24 after burning down just a week before the 2022 race. It did not race last year. The tragic accident ended the car's 24-year-long entry streak, basically. It raced 24 years in a row except for last year. So it was first operated by Kissling Motorsport, but the German team ceased operation in 2019, so it's now run by a German gentleman named Olaf Beckmann, and he's the one who's been campaigning the car for the past 4 years or so. Now, that car used to race in what was called Group H. Now, Group H was a class designated just to run old cars in the 24 hours. So it was designed to run things like E30 M3s, old Mercedes, like 2.3 16 Evos, things like that. Like old DTM cars, old touring cars can run in the current Nürburgring under Group H. Now, Group H ceased to exist in 2021, so now they have to participate in the SP classes. So the Opel Manta runs an SP3 because it's an NA 2-liter. But say you had, hypothetically speaking, a 1988 Porsche 944 Turbo Cup. Now that has theoretically, now that has a 2.5-liter turbocharged inline 4, meaning you would have to run an SP4T, which this weekend there were only 6 cars in SP4T. However,
so it's a
guaranteed top 10 for starters, guaranteed.
Let's go.
So, however, some of those cars were friggin' fast, and there was a specific...
So the WRX was faster than it should be.
The WRX was so fast.
I will say this, though. The Cayman running in that class with the turbo means it's the 4-cylinder turbo.
Yes, that's why it has to run an SP4.
It is not making more than 25 more horsepower than the Turbo Cup. And if I had to guess, the Turbo Cup's lighter. Even by 100 pounds. Just 100 pounds.
Right, but the Cayman's a Cayman.
So?
It's a way better chassis than a 944.
Is it, though?
It is. You know why? Because they still make the Cayman. They don't make the 944 anymore.
944 Turbo Cup being the best balance of a balance in the history of the automotive brand that is known for race cars, but...
So here's the other thing, though, is I don't think your car would qualify for SP4 the way it is. For starters, it would be a nightmare to race. But I don't think
the only reason I think it'd be a nightmare is I was joking with my dad about this at the dinner table tonight. We were all at dinner, and I was telling my dad, I was like, "Hey, I think the Turbo Cup can run." I was like, "But the GT3 cars would be behind me, flashing their LEDs, and I'd have my pop-up halogens like, oh,
having no idea where you're going.
pop-ups, but not LEDs, like old backlit bulbs.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, old halogens. So, well, here's the thing. For starters, that Opel Manta has nothing in common with the Opel Manta that raced 24 years ago. Because that is now
kind of finish.
Well, in that case, yes. But the problem is, like, number one, your car's a bit too street car to be race car.
No, we can strip the interior out of it. All that stuff was added back in after it was done with his race car days. It was stripped out.
Well, anyways, Nick, you could race your car in SP4T. However, some things we're going to talk about before we get to the actual race is some cool liveries that we had going on. So there were 4 Audis racing, R8 GT3 cars that look super cool. So the number 1 Audi from Audi Sport Team PHX was liveried like the Audi 90 Quattro that raced in IMSA back in the 90s. The number 22 Audi R8 was liveried like the R18 e-tron. And the number 39 car was liveried like an old S1 Quattro, like the Pikes Peak car, which looked super cool. And the number 40 car was liveried like the chrome and red A4 Super Touring car from the 90s, which was super cool. And that number 40 car had a stacked driver lineup of Mike Rockenfeller, Timo Shader, and Martin Tomasic, which was a stacked lineup, all of which being DTM championships with Audi, and Rockenfeller obviously winning Le Mans with Audi in 2010, and Timo having won the 24 Hours of Nürburgring in 2003. And then there was a Mercedes that was actually painted and then drawn on to look like a cartoon, which was sick. Now, the actual racing, so some things to note. A crowd favorite, the Manthey Racing 911, was out with 14 hours and 25 minutes to go. Big shame. They had a tire issue that they could not figure out. The car was going through tires. They were blowing tires. They had a tire issue. They couldn't figure it out, so they retired the car from the race. With 11 hours and 35 minutes to go, 2 Audi R8s were out of the race. 11 minutes and 20 to go. The number 163 Porsche 911 Cup 2, because there were also Cup car classes, who was leading the Cup 2 class, was off. They had a wreck. Just 2 minutes later, the number 72 M4 GT3, which was leading the entire race, had a mechanical issue. That car had mechanical issues for like half an hour that no one really understood. And then 2 minutes after that, there was a really big wreck between the number 54 Porsche and a Dacia Logan. Yes, there was a Dacia Logan running. There was a pretty big wreck of the Porsche. It was passing the Logan. It was going like around the outside of a left-hand crest, went over, the car spun, and then made contact with the Logan. They had a pretty massive wreck. It took them 45 minutes to get those cars off the track. Now, our results, I'm not going to run through the entire results because, like I said, there's 135 cars, but we would like to congratulate the number 30 Ferrari 296 GT3 of Fricadelli Racing, who won the 51st running of the 24 Hours. They are also the first non-German manufacturer to win the race since the 2002 victory by the Zakspeed Viper. And set a distance record of 162 laps. It was the first 24 hour that went over 160 laps, so that was pretty sick. That car actually, at one point, had the whole back end of the car replaced because they had some damage going on. Nick, Patty, do you have comments, concerns, questions about the Nürburgring 24?
Well, I thought it was a fantastic race. I'm upset that Ferrari won, but like I said, I'm very happy that Klaus got his win. Fun fact. I was looking up times around the Nordschleife. Granted, without the Grand Prix circuit, which adds some time, yes.
Okay.
But a street 944 turbo with all of its interior, the different tuning, all that.
Mm-hmm.
was running an 820 around the Nordschleife minus the GP circuit. Granted,
Okay.
GP circuit can be close to a minute or more.
Mm-hmm. And a
But if you were
944,
to-
the more.
Let's say the factory turbo cup is
Yes.
20 seconds over the entire Nordschleife, faster than a street car, which I don't think is too risky to say.
No, that's
Because it's
reasonable.
lightweight. All right.
Right.
So it would be net about 40 seconds or a minute slower. The GT3 cars were running an 820. Granted, including the GP circuit.
Right, the whole circuit.
This car with the GP circuit was running in the mid nines.
I don't know. I'd also like it noted.
That was pretty good.
I did some quick maths while I was sitting there watching the race, and like
Indeed.
it would easily cost you almost $100,000 to go run that race for a weekend in the Turbo Cup.
I don't know if it would.
You got to hire a
Here's
team.
why.
You got to ship a car over. You got to ship people over. You also probably have to rebuild the entire car before we go.
Shipping a car is $2,000 to $3,000 each way. Okay?
Yep.
Hiring a race team. If my dad was to hire the best North American Porsche Cup team in 2004, 2005, which is when he was looking, it was about $35,000.
Okay, so that's probably what, 55 now?
Let's say it is, but we're also talking for a much more expensive car with much more expensive tires and all that stuff, right?
Not running endurance races.
But also, I would hire a team in Germany, so I wouldn't have to ship people like it's the slave trade, Ben. Get your head out of the 1800s.
Just saying.
But it would be less than $100,000.
Not far off
If
of it.
you don't want to.
I say, you also have to be completely okay with not bringing that car home. So you have to be okay with that car never working again. Okay. So that is going to conclude the Nürburgring 24. Nick, Patty, would you like to talk about the Indy 500 qualifying?
NASCAR.
Nick wants to talk about NASCAR. Nick,
I didn't
NASCAR.
watch
No, go ahead. NASCAR.
ran at North Wilkesboro for the first time since 1996. Your last race winner was Jeff Gordon in the beautiful rainbow DuPont Chevy.
Legendary livery.
So North
Good car.
Wilkesboro, if you didn't know, it's a fantastic car. It's one of the most legendary, original kind of NASCAR tracks on the calendar. It's been around since the 30s. It was there for the birth of NASCAR in the 50s. It was run all the way up to the 90s. It was host to the Tyson Holly Farms 400 from the 80s through the 90s. Dale Earnhardt had a bunch of wins there. Richard Petty is the winningest driver there. And so we're talking about a track that had wins from Terry Labonte, Richard Petty, Dale Earnhardt, Rusty Wallace, like the creme de la creme of the NASCAR drivers, the people that are in the Hall of Fame, that are Cale Yarborough, some of the most legendary drivers in the history of the sport. And so this track fell into disrepair in the 2000s, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. on, I forget the name of the show, but I think it was Speedways Lost to Time or
Something
Lost
like that.
Speedways of Time. Yeah, something like that. On Peacock and NBC, he actually did an episode where he and his co-host went and visited the track and found like old newspaper clippings from the ticket booth in the 90s and stuff like that. So when COVID hit, apparently there was $18 million granted by the governor of North Carolina to sports and recreation or something. I don't remember if it was sports and recreation, the track in particular, but it was one of the two. And so the track was refurbished. But the thing I love about this is the fact that the track was restored like a vintage car is restored to new. They didn't build your fancy boxes. They didn't repave it. It is the original asphalt, not even asphalt, concrete.
It's super
from
cool.
1996. The asphalt on the track is the same that Dale Sr. ran, that Cale Yarborough ran, that Rusty Wallace ran. The same concrete. So, and like where the grass was cracking up through the asphalt or through the concrete, they just patched it. Wherever it was, they filled the cracks. They didn't repave it all. They repainted the original Winston Cup NASCAR sponsorships. Granted, Winston hasn't been a sponsor of NASCAR in close to 30 years. It hasn't been legal for Winston to be a sponsor in over 20 years. But they repainted it all. It's really
super cool.
This was, like, aside from Le Mans or Daytona, one of the races I was most excited about, purely because Daytona has been run at consistently. Talladega has been run at consistently. But this track has all the history of those tracks, but it hasn't been modernized. Daytona does not look anything like what it looked like in the 90s, let alone the early 2000s. Talladega does not look anything it looked like in the late 90s. And this track has been frozen in time, basically, since 1996, when NASCAR was running at Suzuka and Motegi and all these different tracks, and it's been brought up to date. So they ran there this year for the All-Star race. Granted, they're not running. This is a regular series race, so we don't know if it's coming back next year. But It was the All-Star race year. I'm gonna do the top 15.
That's reasonable
because there are only 24 cars running. Ricky Stenhouse finished last, punching the wall, but it's fine.
It's okay.
Okay, in 15,
it happens.
Josh Berry is the number 5 car. We have Martin Truex Jr. in 14th, Denny Hamlin in 13th, Christopher Bell in 12th, and Ross Chastain in 11th. Thank God, if Ross Chastain would have won this race, I would have never watched NASCAR again.
I love Ross Chastain.
Joey Logano in 10th, Ty Gibbs in 9th, Eric Jones in 8th, in the best livery of the weekend, running
really
Richard
good livery.
Petty's mid-80s Pontiac livery. So hot.
Super good.
We have Daniel Suarez in 7th, Ryan Blaney in 6th, Chase Elliott in 5th, coming back, obviously. He's had a race or two after coming back from injury. We have Chase Briscoe in 4th, Tyler Reddick in 3rd, Bubba Wallace in 2nd, and Kyle Larson in 1st. Now, Bubba Wallace and Kyle Larson, obviously there were others, but those two ran the Truck Series race. Kyle Larson won that race. We had Dale Earnhardt Jr. running the late model race on
That was
Friday.
super cool.
Bubba Wallace was also in that race. Chase Briscoe was in that race. NASCAR has been posting a lot on Twitter saying if there was one track that you could bring back that was a vintage NASCAR track that's been lost to time, what would it be? And getting personal, I'm kind of bummed that this whole North Wilkesboro revival didn't come sooner.
Mm-hmm.
If it did, I think Texas World Speedway would have been saved for
Yeah.
a few reasons. One race in Texas. And there's multiple races in other different states.
Mm-hmm.
2, that track, more than any track in Texas that's a NASCAR track, and more than a lot of NASCAR tracks in the country, has significant rich history going back to the 50s and 60s. And 3rd, it was a super speedway. It was one of the original, yes, Ben, in the back.
Hi, yes. Ben Walther here, not NASCAR fan. Aren't there 2 races in Texas? Don't we race Dakota and Texas Motor Speedway?
Dakota, oval races.
Sorry. Okay.
And Dakota was only going back 2 years. But if this North Wilkesboro revival had happened earlier, Dakota wouldn't have even been on the calendar.
True. Yes.
So,
sorry.
At the time, but Texas World Speedway, a super speedway, Texas, 50s, 60s, like, anyway. I tweeted, I was the only person in the entire Twitter thread that said Texas World Speedway is the track.
Thank you for representing the great state of Texas, Nick Patty. We appreciate you.
Somebody had to do it. I'm really, I'm a martyr for Texas World Speedway.
That's what it is. Let it be known.
For those of you that don't know, it's been turned into Texas A&M housing that Nathan Villemay may or may not live on. I don't know where he lives, but it's in College Station, and he went to A&M, and he's the only Aggie
he lives in Georgia. But, yeah.
He may or may not have, past tense, lived on it.
Hi, Nathan.
That all said, NASCAR was fantastic. The race itself was a little bit less entertaining than I wanted it to be, but I don't feel like that was any fault of the track. I feel like that's because they cut it down to 24 drivers, obviously, with the heat races. But the on-track fighting was good. Kyle Larson ran away with the race, but he ran away with the race in the Truck Series, and he won. So, you know, some drivers do or don't have rides in the Truck Series for optional races. And so Kyle Larson came into this out of any driver on the grid, being the only driver that prior to Sunday had driven on it, aside from Bubba Wallace or Chase Briscoe and the late models. Late model.
Mm-hmm.
but obviously they all had mixed success. And Kyle Larson won his Truck Series race, so obviously he found a recipe, a secret to the success, and he carried it on into the Cup Series race. But I don't know if it was actually sold out, but if you look at videos and pictures on the Instagram or online, they were basically sold out. I mean, it was a absolutely packed weekend, and I told Shelby, I was like, I know it's NASCAR and whatever, but if they end up adding it to like the calendar for a full season race or regular season race, I think I would make the trip out to North Carolina. I have family up there, but
I'd totally make the trip out there. That'd be sick.
The first regular season race at North Wilkesboro since 1996. It is car related, but my dad confirmed he's going to go do a Spa Francorchamps track weekend in the Cayman GT4 next year. And I'm not going.
I was waiting for it. I was like, Nick's upset about it. Somehow Nick is upset.
Now, so I don't get included in that anymore.
Oh, that's funny. I'd like to say something. It's funny for me. I'd like to say something nice about NASCAR. Something I really like about NASCAR is that all the drivers over a weekend, like, will go and race in the lower class races, the other series, like the truck and the and what was the class that Dale was racing in? Sorry, late model. Yes, thank you. I like that they go and do that.
What's going on?
What's up?
I thought you were the Dale Jr. guy. What's going on?
I am a Dale Jr. fan, but I just couldn't remember the name of it off the top of it. I couldn't even remember. I'm sorry. But I think that's super cool because you don't see that in anything else. Like, you don't see Max Verstappen being like,
"Fake fan."
It's true. It's true. But like, you don't see Max Verstappen going and hopping in the F2 race before the F1 race, which for starters would be hilarious.
He would shit on every human.
Murder people. Murder the entire field. But that was super cool. I'm probably going to go and find a pirated version of that race tonight and rewatch it. Nick, Patty, I think I'm going to talk about motorcycle racing now so that you don't have to. And then we can finish with GT World Challenge and Indy qualifying.
Was talking about motorcycles. He had a Yamaha R1 that was stolen a week after he bought it.
Who is this?
The bartender at Peggy's on the Green.
That's unfortunate.
He heard from Nick Klein, who I obviously live with, that I was a Porsche guy. And so he's talking about how he's a bike guy and he used to live in Carmel. And I was like, wow, you have money and I don't. Okay, asshole.
Damn.
I was telling him how I wanted a bike and he goes, you should get one. I was like, don't convince me. Try to convince my wife. He and Nick Klein both tried to convince Shelby that I should get a motorcycle for track usage. Neither were effective.
Didn't work, yeah.
No.
She's a stubborn one. Yeah. Well, speaking of motorcycles, we had the Northwest 200, not this weekend, but this past week, and, well, there was some exciting results, and there was also some controversy to start with, which we'll start there. So, some controversy leading into the Northwest 200 weekend. If you're unfamiliar with the Northwest 200, it's kind of like the Isle of Man TT. It's a road race. It's pretty famous. It's pretty old. It's about half distance of the Isle of Man TT, and a lot less people die. So it's not nearly as entertaining to watch. But the leading team, FHO Racing, which was the team that everyone expected to win. Nick, you muted yourself.
Listen. Ben also realized he couldn't only afford the BMW bike in real life. He realized he couldn't afford the Lego version. Ben, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, dude. Lego makes a super sick M1000RR Lego, but it's $250, and that is not worth it to me at the moment in time. Maybe later. I'll probably cave later and do it, but they also
You won't buy it.
They also have a Panigale. I kind of want to buy that one as well. Anyway, I have problems. So, what's up? Yeah, they do. It's much smaller though. It's like half the size. Anyway, while Nick does that,
$70.
I know it because it's way smaller. Like the BMW has like an engine that moves and stuff. It's like this big. It's pretty big.
But the Ducati looks so. Oh, on Amazon it's only $230.
Oh, bargain. Nick, can I talk about the Northwest 200 now?
I mean, I guess it's your podcast.
Okay,
I guess I can't
so-
really tell you no.
Sorry, folks, we forgot how to do this. So, at the Northwest 200, FHO Racing, which was the team that everyone expected to dominate because they have Peter Hickman. If you don't know who that is, he's the current, I'm hitting everything on my desk. He's the current record holder at the Isle of Man. Everyone expected Peter Hickman to dominate this race, along with his teammate Josh Brooks. Now, Thursday morning, they withdrew from the race, which was very exciting considering that the race was on Thursday. And the reason why they did this is the team was informed that their 2023 spec BMW M1000 RRs were deemed illegal given their use of carbon fiber wheels. Apparently, carbon fiber wheels are banned from competing in Irish road races. Very weird rule to have, however, there we are. What's up?
My area.
However, the Northwest 200 requires that bikes racing in Superstock class, which is what they were racing in, must use their homologated wheels, which in the case of the BMWs are the carbon fiber ones. So you have to use your homologated wheels, which are carbon fiber, but you can't use carbon fiber wheels because they're not allowed. So
then,
yeah. So BMW said, see y'all at the Isle of Man in 2 weeks. So, FHO Racing will have both bikes at the Isle of Man, which will compete in both Superstock and Supersport in this configuration, which is completely okay.
that's like them saying, hey, Shelby, you can't use your GT350 in competition stock. Why? The rules say it has to be stock. You have carbon fiber wheels. It's stock.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's pretty much the whole thing. Now, the reason why...
For you slow people? Like,
Right. That's pretty much what everyone was upset about. So FHO Racing was like, yeah, cool, we'll just not race this year. So they're not racing this year.
maybe
However...
you should steal a paper Stuttgart neighbors and just make them magnesium.
Well, you can get, on M1000Rs, you can get a set of alloy wheels for an M1000RR. But it's an
But if
option.
you spend that much money.
It's pretty much it. Is like BMW, they could have put on the alloy wheels to race, but they were like, no, the rules say use homologated wheels. We have homologated wheels. You just don't like them. So, yeah. However, it was not a BMW that was victorious at this year's Northwest 200. It was, in fact, Glenn Irwin for Beer Monster Ducati on his Panigale V4R, who won the Northwest 200 Superbike race with an average speed of 123.934 miles per hour. He also won the Friday Superbike race. Well done to him.
Look at this.
Hi, Hondo. Thank you. However, in that Saturday race, in second was Alistair Seeley for Milwaukee BMW with an average speed of 123.76, followed by Dean Harrison for DAO Racing Kawasaki with an average speed of 123.722. Now, the last thing to finish this off, best wishes to... Hi, Hondo. Hi, bud. How's it going? For those of you that are listening to this on audio, this will make no sense as to what's happening right now.
Go watch it on YouTube. For yourself.
Yeah, go watch on YouTube. You can see the doggo. But last thing I'm going to say about the Northwest 200 is best wishes to Lee Johnston and his recovery after his crash Thursday for Super Sport practice. He had a pretty nasty crash and had to be airlifted to a hospital, so best wishes to him. Now, I'm going to talk about Moto America before we get to Indy, because we had 2 races this past weekend at my favorite racetrack on the Moto America calendar, that is Barber Motorsports Park. And, well, the weekend was dominated by one Jake Gagne.
Wrong.
Elaborate?
You heard me. Road America?
No, Road America's a better track.
Yes.
Road America's better, but this is my
It should be
favorite.
your favorite.
It doesn't have to be.
Wrong.
Okay.
You're wrong.
I'm not allowed to have opinions. Let it be known. So we had two races this past weekend at Barber Motorsports Park in Alabama, and they were both dominated by one Jake Gagne on his fresh and lean Yamaha R1M. He won both races as well as qualifying on pole position. For race one, your results were as followed. As I said, Jake Gagne P1, his teammate Cameron Peterson in P2, Matthew Schultz on another Yamaha P3, Cameron Beaubier, who's the man that I'm rooting for this year, in P4, PJ Jacobson, P5 on another BMW, Josh Herron, who is probably my favorite rider on the grid for Warhorse Ducati, in P6. He had an outstanding move of 7th to 3rd place into turn 1.
Warhorse?
I know, it's really good. It's really good. Ducati's got all the good names. But in race 1, Josh Herron had an outstanding move in race 1 in turn 1, going 7th to 3rd, which was super impressive. Richie Escalante in 7th, Ashton Yates 8th, Corey Alexander 9th, Hayden Gillum 10th, David Anthony 11th, Tony Elias 12th, Max Flinders 13th, Travis Weeman 14th, Benjamin Smith in 15th, Nolan Lampkin in 16th, Joseph Gianna. Did you say something?
Was it Wayman?
Yeah.
Joseph Wayman?
Joseph Gianotto in 17th and Jason Waters in 18th. And then we had Gabriel De La Silva in who DNF'd along with Danilo Lewis, Ryan Burke, JC Camacho, and Zachary Butler all DNF'd. Race 2, Jake Gagne once again on the top step of the podium. Matthew Schultz made it up to P2 in this race, followed by Cameron Beaubier. Richie Escalante in 4th for Suzuki, PJ Jacobson in 5th once again, Josh Herron in 6th once again, Corey Alexander in 7th, Ashton Yates 8th, Tony Elias 9th, Hayden Gilliam in 10th, Gabriel De La Silva in 11th for Kawasaki, Joseph Gianotto in 12th for Kawasaki, Jason Waters 13th, and Nolan Lampkin in 14th. Cameron Peterson, Zachary Butler, David Anthony, Max Flinders, Danilo Lewis, Benjamin Smith, Travis Weeman, Ryan Burke, and JC Camacho all DNF'd from race 2. And your next race will be at Road America, June 2nd and 4th. Nick Penny, would you like to talk about the Indy 500 qualifying?
Yeah.
Okay.
I need a hot dog. So, Indy 500 qualifying was interesting.
It was.
And I can say that because I didn't watch it. Graham Rahal did not make it. Tony Kanaan
Which was
and
surprising.
Carpenter set the exact same, not lap average, not 2 lap average, not 3 lap average, 4 lap average to the 10,000th of a mile per hour. And if you're wondering, I don't know of any technology outside of IndyCar that can measure to the 10,000th mile per hour. Like F1, not a chance. Like not even on their radar.
They don't need
IndyCar
to. Yeah.
is measuring to and they do need to, yeah. So that's like crazy. And I don't remember if that's ever happened before in Indy 500 quali, but
I don't think that close.
So I didn't watch it, so Ben has through lines. He can go ahead and talk about those, but I'm going to go ahead and read through the results as he conjures up some through lines to talk about.
Great.
So IndyCar is like MotoGP in this way, in the sense that it has rows of 3. So I'm going to go ahead and read from the bottom to the top, the 11 rows. In last place, we have Jack Harvey with Stingray Robb and Christian Lundgaard on the same row. We have Catherine Legg, R.C. Anderson, and Callum Ilott on the 10th row. We have Augustin Canapino, Devlin DiFrancesco, and Stefan Wilson on the 9th row. We have Marco Andretti, David Malukas, and Simon Pagino on the 8th row. Colton Herta, Helio Castroneves, and Romain Grosjean on the 7th row. Not going to lie, pretty good qualifying for Grosjean.
Pretty
Row
impressed by
6
that.
is Ryan Ray, Joseph Newgarden, and Connor Daly. A really impressive quality for Connor Daly. Row 5, Kyle Kirkwood, Scott McLaughlin, and Ed Carpenter. Row 4, Will Power, Benjamin Pedersen, and Marcus Ericsson. Row 3, Tony Kanaan, Takuma Sato, and Alexander Rossi. Row 2, Scott Dixon, Pato O'Ward, and Santino Ferrucci. And then row 1, leading the field, is Felix Rosenqvist, Rinus VK, and Alex Below.
Now, something to note if you're unfamiliar with IndyCar, they do qualifying a bit differently, especially at Indy and for the Indy 500, is they actually do qualifying based on average lap speed, not lap time, which I think is pretty cool. Something I did. What's up?
I think it's a better way to do it because
I think it is.
Theoretically could have a faster lap time, but on average be slower. And this is like, you could have a slower lap time, but who's actually fastest? Who's carrying the most speed over 4 laps?
Right. And something I actually did not realize with IndyCar is IndyCar kind of gets thrown around as a spec series. It's not a spec series. They're all running the same chassis and the same transmission, but the motors are different, and they're allowed to do what they want with the suspension and the aero, which can do an insane amount for these cars, which I did not realize.
How his team was basically, he literally said in the interview, throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks. Like, he said they were testing new setups in a qualifying run. He was like, we didn't know how the car was going to handle until I was turning into the corners. And then you realize, oh, shit, it handles this way, it handles that way. So as opposed to F1, where you kind of have general understandings of the differences between chassis or between engine power, whether it's Honda or Mercedes or Renault. In IndyCar, there's a little bit, power differentials, but chassis the same. It really comes down to the nitty gritty of
setup
or hundreds of degrees of tuning angles on setup or angles on aero, and more than that. Let's say you're a driver that prefers a driving style a particular way, you actually don't have as much flexibility as you do in F1. Where
because that way it might be slower.
Max Verstappen is going to always prefer having that power unit advantage in a car handling a certain way, and Red Bull build the car around that. But if you're Colton Herta, the chassis is built regardless of what you like, regardless of the handling characteristics that you prefer. It's only down to your team adjusting minor things to try to get you as close as possible to your preferred setup. And obviously that's going to be different around Indianapolis, which is really a rectangle, even though they call it an oval, compared to all the road courses that they race at throughout the year. It's going to be different than Texas Motor Speedway. It's going to be different than Charlotte and all these other different oval tracks.
Right. And I really noticed this. I guess I never pay attention that much to top speed at Indy because I've never watched a qualifying session for the Indy 500. I've only ever watched the actual race, so I've never paid that much attention to the speed. But in a qualifying session, Felix Rosenqvist, at one point, I saw pop up on the little display that they have, he did 241 or 242 at one point, which is insane. And then you had Jack Harvey and Graham Rahal at the back who were like struggling to do 230, 231. But
if you're listening and you're like 240, that's really fast, but like F1 does 210, like we are talking 917s, 956s, Sauber C9s at the absolute limit. Down the Mulsanne straight, we're doing 240. That was in a straight line, round effects, turbos, V8s, flat 12s, like throwing everything you can at it. They were getting that.
Twin turbo V6.
240 average with 4 legitimate corners. Granted, it's like an oval track in NASCAR. We're not talking about like kinks or little jogs in the straight. We're talking 4 distinct corners. That there's longer straights for 2 of them, but then the other ones are short straights. I mean, we're talking significant cornering loads. And they're averaging what the fastest sports cars ever seen on planet Earth were doing in a straight line. That's absurd.
So, it's ridiculous. IndyCar is so interesting to watch. Which, thank God that IndyCar had stuff going on this weekend, because without F1, I was a little worried, but we had plenty going on. So we have all of that to look forward to for next weekend's Indy 500. That is Sunday. Nick and I will. I think it's next weekend. Yeah. So Nick and I will surely be watching that, and we will most definitely have an update for y'all on that. The last bit of motorsport news that we have is GT World Challenge, the Fanatec GT World Challenge, which made its way to Circuit of the Americas this weekend. Which neither of us went to because mainly I completely forgot that it was this weekend, even though it was written on my whiteboard right there.
In a row. So
yeah, also that we've been to Dakota a lot this year. But if you're unfamiliar with the GT World Challenge, it is GT3 racing. Pretty simple. That's all it is. No LMP cars, no touring cars, nothing like that. Super cool, simple racing. Yes, sorry. But it's not like the Nürburgring where there were 15 million different classes and there was an Opel racing next to a 296. We didn't have any of that.
Opel Manta to a BMW M4 GT3, yeah.
Right, which, oh my gosh. Okay, that M4 is such a big car. Like, I know it's a big car.
Can we talk about how much faster it is than the Porsches in a straight line?
It's so
because
fast.
when they're on the back straight on the Nordschleife,
so
the
fast.
GT3 had a run in the draft, pulled out past the BMW, and then the Porsche's like 9,000, and then the BMW's just like
chugging along, man. Just chugging along.
I'm like, dude, it's such a big car, and how is it
forced
so
induction will do that to a man? It happens. Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess the Mercedes and the Porsches are the only. What's up?
Can we get the GT3 with twin turb skis and we call it the 935?
You know, I'm actually kind of surprised that they don't base the GT3 off of, like,
the GT2.
Yeah, which supposedly is coming. By the way, stay tuned for a very big Porsche episode in the next 2 weeks.
Cream.
Because, not that. That won't be in the episode.
Like for Easter?
Okay. Anyway, we had GT World Challenge at Coda. Nick, Patty, would you like to run through some results? You put the dock away. I know you did. I tried to catch you off guard.
The dock.
Scroll.
Where
it's
are
in
the?
there.
Oh. Okay, you spelled George Kurtz wrong, dumbass. You put an I. Okay, so GT World Challenge at Coda.
I made notes.
Top 3 in race 1. Eric Figueras and Stephen McAleer in the RS1 Porsche 992 GT3R. Stephen McAleer being a famous Continental Tire GT4 Continental Tire Challenge GT4 driver in the Cayman. In second, we had Justin Wetherill and Ryan Dial. If you don't know who Ryan Dial is, you don't watch enough sports car racing, don't talk to me. In the Triarci Competizione 296 GT3. And in first place, we had Colin Braun and George Kurtz in the CrowdStrike Mercedes AMG GT3 car. In race 2, we had Adam Adelson and Elliot Skier in the Wright Motorsports Porsche 992 GT3R. In second, we had Eric Filgueras and Steve McAleer in that RS1 Porsche. And in first place, we had Ashton Harrison and Mario Farnbacher in the Racer's Edge Acura NSX GT3 Evo 22. Fun fact about both those drivers, Ashton Harrison was being trained by Tom Long. He was her driver coach, who I was social media manager for with Forbush Performance and the Toyota GT4. And then Mario Farnbacher is one of the brothers. There's Mario Farnbacher and there's another one. I don't remember. Dominic Farnbacher? I think it's Dominic.
Okay.
And my dad had the GT3 Super Cup that was run by Farnbacher Lowell's Racing in the Porsche Super Cup in 2004. We have rounds 7 and 8 at Virginia International Raceway, June 16th through 18th. SRO GT World Challenge is a series that really gets no love. But that's their fault because they don't advertise it well.
It's true.
It's good racing, though. So,
it is. You should watch it.
You're off the track because it's never televised. Make sure to go watch.
Yeah, go watch that. Don't go watch F1. F1 doesn't need more viewers. Go watch that.
Next weekend is Monaco. It's going to be dog shit, and we're going to have Indianapolis.
I'm so excited for it. I'm stoked for Monaco.
If Alonso puts it on pole, he can hold it the whole race.
See, that's what I'm saying, though. Is like qualifying matters more than anything else. Nick's going to go put on an Alonso hat, so I'm going to wrap this up quickly.
I was going to put on an Alonso hat. I'll be back.
Anyway, thank you so much for watching and listening to episode 51 of The Clutch Dump. As Nick said at the top of the show, make sure you go follow us on social media at The Clutch Dump. Make sure whatever platform you're listening to this on, make sure you hit the follow or the subscribe button so that you don't miss an episode. If you're on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, like the video, share the video, and hit the notification bell so that you get every video when it is uploaded. Make sure to stay tuned for episode 52, which will probably be a news episode, or maybe we'll do something different. Who knows? And Nick's dog is back. So that is going to conclude for episode 51. Thank y'all so much for listening and so much for watching. We will see you next time.